and today I'm going to show you something that I've just newly made, which is an axe, and it is also my birthday, and this is basically a combination. I gave myself my birthday as a deadline to get a pair of axes made like this one. And by the way, if you're interested, I'm 67, so still swinging clubs, keeping fit, and loving it basically. Anyway, to talk to you about this. So, in 1907, Health and Strength magazine featured a front cover of Tom Burrows, who was the world endurance champion of club swinging basically, and he's holding a pair of axes. So I'll just grab the other one, and he's kind of in a position like this with his feet together, looking very serious. He's got one hand like this, and you can see I'll flash the cover up on the video for you to see. So I think his hand is slightly further up, and he's basically in this sort of position. And I mean, that position is the windmill, from the windmill. So if we stop the windmill here, sorry, there, and there's a position. So, and that, I've had that image for quite some time. I found it on the internet, and I've always thought, well, God, what would it have been like to swing those axes? I mean, they look pretty amazing. And then, you know, my birthday was coming up in November. I decided to make them, and quite by chance, I went to I did a demonstration for a local woodturners club, and I have to give a shout out to John Scarf, who's one of the members there, because he actually made the blanks for me to cut the heads out of here. So I mean, that's just for this part here. A square piece, sort of a rectangular piece of wood that I could actually shape in. So thank you, John. Big thanks. Now, and I got to wondering, when I started the project, I got to wondering and started searching as to where on earth he would have got the shape of the actual axe head itself. And as Russ Agata commented on the picture that I recently featured on Facebook, was that this section here looks like a truncheon, which it does. I mean, if you imagine a police truncheon without this bit here, I mean, that's exactly what it is. And then in the Tom Burrows picture, it's basically a straight piece of wood or whatever it would have been to build it. Anyway, back to the story. So where did the head come from? I searched for Australian axes, because Tom was an Australian, and couldn't find anything. Basically, the broad axe in Australia has a straight edge, so I mean, it is slightly curved, but not as curved as this is here. And then I found something which was really interesting. The New York Journal published an article on the 13th of January 1896 about Tom Burrows. And it said in the article that he was with the British Army, because you've got to remember Australia was a colony of Britain at the time. So he was in Egypt, stationed as part of the British Army as a sergeant. And he was, the article was about his attempt to better his own record of non-stop swinging for 24 hours. Which he was doing at the time with a 2-pound club, something of this nature, maybe a little bit fat around here, because they used to have hollow clubs, and you know, for the effect, and the crowd could see it, the clubs were made slightly wider, but they were hollow, but they still weighed 2 pounds. And that got me to thinking, because if he was in Egypt, he may have seen some more sort of Middle Eastern type of weaponry there. He might have been to museums or whatever, and suddenly penny dropped. I thought, well, okay, I'm going to look for the crescent shape. And lo and behold, typed it into Google, and crescent shape axes came up. And this basically this sort of short axe like this is called a tabar or a tabarzin, and it's a Iranian Persian saddle axe that was used by foot soldiers and the cavalry. Now, just a little bit more about this. So this is a crescent shaped. That actually measures 16 inches across here. I made this totally out of wood, out of the local JARRAH that we have here in West Australia. And sometimes these axes would be made with a spike that would come out of here, and or sometimes a hammer. So I mean, it was very much a sort of, war axe hammer type of thing. And I also think the other interesting comment that I found about it was that the axes were very good because you could hook with them. So you could hook with an axe, and you could hook into somebody's shield, pull it away, and then stab them with the other point. So I mean, you pull down and then straight into the opponent. It's just a bit of background there. Anyway, these axes were designed to be light. They were made completely of metal. They had a hollow handle and a fairly thin blade. And also, sorry, before I get carry on, and also in the handle from the pommel, there used to be a stiletto or a dagger in some of them, not all of them, but some of them. So I mean, that was a backup sort of weapon. And they were very popular in Persia, modern day Iran, Armenia, Egypt, and the surrounding countries. Now, on these axes also, the blades were fairly thin, so the metal axes, thin blades on the head itself, because it was to cut flesh. And you might think, well, yeah, what's that got to do with it? Well, if you take a wood axe, for example, a wood axe is a lot heavier because wood is harder to cut and you've got to hit it harder, so you need more weight in the head. But this was ideal for fighting. And basically the weights of these axes were anything from about 0.5 of a kilo up to 3 kilos, or in imperial terms, 1 pound to about 6 pounds. Okay. So, and also from a manufacturing point of view, they were easy to make. They weren't as difficult to make as swords, sabers, and all the other sort of, with the sort of curved blades, straight blades, and so on. Because these axes were very, very common in rural areas. A lot of the soldiers were rural people who were conscripted, and that's basically how they sort of came about. Now, I want to get on to the balance of an axe as opposed to the balance of an Indian club. So first of all, we're going to take, this is a 2.5 pound club, that's a 2.5 pound axe. And I basically want to talk to you just briefly about the balance. So if I put my fingers there to roughly where the club will just balance on, I don't know if I can do it on one finger. There it is, it's nearly there. So we're kind of in between, I was on 2 fingers, my second and third finger. So there's the center of the club, and the club is balanced. Now I've actually measured this, and this is about 7.5 inches to here. Okay, so the weight is run about here, and it's it swings really nicely. Now, if we go to the axe, and I put my finger just behind here, and it's much easier to balance out. You can see it. The balancing happens a bit much closer to the head, so there's more impact here, more power, basically. So this would have been, in sort of comparison terms, if you equal, say, the Indian, a 2.5 pound Indian club to a sword, this axe would have been in the middle and the mace would have been at the other end. So the sword would have been quicker, the axe slightly slower, and the mace slower still in sort of fighting terms. Now we get on to the interesting stuff in relation to swinging the axe. With the flight path, as you saw with my immediate demonstration, if I hold the axe up in front of me here, you can see that if I turn around, the blade is facing forward. Now, if you watch me and if I step forward so I don't hit the back wall, if I lower the axe that way, you can see that the blade is turning away from me, so it turns away this way. Okay, so if I just turn around now and do it the other way, so if I lower the axe here, the blade is coming through here, and the opposite way. So you can see that there's an element of elbow, arm turn, wrist turn. So it's turning on the axis, but the amplification is huge through here. And you've got to be very careful with that. In my searches I found a really interesting story, the matchstick story in relation to axes. Apparently there's sort of, in North America and anywhere where wood felling was a big thing, in the last century, the last century, 19th century, there was a story going around that axemen could stick a match into a crack. He'd swing the axe through, split the match, and it would light on both sides as it split. And I mean, how does that for coordination and you know, making sure that you hit the right spot? Now, I mean, you know, and here you've got that deviation. So anytime if I move my wrist like this, you can see the deviation there is absolutely massive. So when you're swinging, you have to be very, very careful. And now I'm going to do it from the front. So as the axe comes down to my legs, it's pointing to the back here. There it is there, sagittal. As I bring it up here, it's frontal plane, frontal, and now sagittal, and then frontal plane again. So it turns all the time. And this was something that I was to a certain degree aware of, but not quite, because I hold and swing Indian clubs with a very loose grip. And I can feel that the clubs are turning in my hand, but I was never aware of it to the degree that it's actually doing it on its own axis. So, you know, the club is actually spinning on its own axis. This is what I'm trying to tell you. So, from a point of view of swinging the axe, you have to be very, very careful that you're watching the planes, and you've got to stand, so, you know, very carefully making sure that you don't hit yourself. So, with that said, let's have a bit of a swing. knock at the end. I tried to show you from all angles. The control is huge, and you can probably see, I mean, I knocked them the first time in the first few seconds of swinging, and I've just knocked them at the finish because you just, you know, because you're working blind a lot of the time. You're out here and you've got to feel where the axe head is. Another very interesting thing about these axes, if you compare them to an Indian club, I mean, you've got the balance issue, which is what the one thing that I talked to you about. So, you know, you've got that sort of 7.5 inches there and almost 10 here from the handle. So, you know, the impact, if I hit somebody with the Indian club, it will be less. This is going to be more of an impact. What I wanted to show you now was that the center of mass is in a different place. So if I hold them up, I mean, against the white, so you can see the Indian club just hangs like a plumb line straight down to the ground, and the axe hangs at an angle. So, you know, there's the center of mass here, but the truncheon section is out to the side. So if I hold the two of them in a saber grip out here, I feel that I need to hold the axe in this position here. So I'm going to try and level them up. So rather than having them parallel like that, I feel that I need to hold the axe in that position here. So the energy goes from my forearm into the center of the axe here. So it's really quite a different experience, and because the center of the mass is further away from my wrist, even though this is both club and axe are exactly the same weight, the axe is much harder because the weight is further away. And I think a classic example of that is the Persian meal, which was basically developed for military training again. And I mean, the concept was that the Pahlavans had to train during the day in non-fighting situations with a club that was twice as heavy or 3 times as heavy as their swords or their other equipment. And you know, if you look at the meal, which is basically, I mean, this was the Persian training was to supplement either swords or maces, because I mean, this is, you know, stands in for both pieces of equipment. The weight is right at the end. So I mean, if I did the balancing thing here, you know, the weight is even further away from the handle again. So that means that the blow, if I went to hit somebody with this, it would be even more impact. So yeah, there you go. It's a beautiful piece of equipment, really interesting to swing. And as I say, this was a sort of a treat to myself for my 67th birthday. And boy, is it exciting. And I think it's not so much even, I mean, exciting having them, but having the experience of swinging them is the main thing to me, because, you know, I just like to try out different things, as you probably know. And this axe now is something that I've got to work on. And I mean, I did do some wrist turns here, this type of thing, as you can see, that even if I put the axe down there and now go into a turn, you can see how the blade turns around. So I haven't tried any back turns yet or anything like that, because I've still got to work out at the risk of hitting myself what happens to the blade. So a lot of interesting stuff. I'll be for sure making some more videos and comparisons between the two. So there you go. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video. I hope you enjoyed this. This is sort of interesting to me, so I mean, hopefully some of you will find this interesting too. See you in the next video.